Can you restate the question?
I can. And I know that they're being informal, but I want to stand up. So the question that we're asking is for each candidate to state what they believe is the proper relationship between the board and the superintendent.
Yeah, well, I would answer it this way. I think it's another good question. I think that, no, actually, as I think about the situation that we're now in, first of all, the board is responsible for hiring the superintendent, which means that the board is responsible for determining what are the criteria and characteristics that we're looking for in a superintendent, which should carry right over into how that superintendent's goals, objectives, and performance evaluations are actually conducted. And so, probably the short answer is the board is responsible for managing the superintendent, or the superintendent's accountable to the board. I also think there are times, though, that the board would have to advocate for the superintendent. There are certain situations that you get into, and there's private information that you're dealing with, but it's in the best interest of the district to actually advocate for the superintendent. But right now, I think that this board has a wonderful opportunity to kind of redefine or reestablish that relationship in accordance with just defining what criteria we're going to be using to select, and then carrying that all the way through, and including the performance evaluation process, where I think the board is responsible for soliciting input from a variety of constituents.
Well, on the face of it, it's pretty simple, right? The superintendent is the employee of the board. The board is the one that sets policy. The board is the group that should set the goals. The superintendent is expected to carry them out. The superintendent comes with the managerial, the educational, those types of skills to implement what the board wants to have done for the community. And it's up to the board to, one, set policy that can be achieved, and two, make sure that it's being achieved. Too many times, at least the times that I've been in school board meetings, something's been asked of the superintendent, and it never gets followed up on. Or things get swept under the rug, for example. Really, the superintendent works for the school board, who is representing everyone in this community. So in a roundabout way, the superintendent really works for all of us.
I was going to say, we don't have to, I know. All
You
right,
don't have to tell me
Kathy, you're on.
You know, really what everyone else has said is exactly what I would say. The superintendent's responsible for the day-to-day operation of the district. He is our employee. He is the one employee that the board has. I would suggest that we do have an opportunity now to really look at where things are, and we should take the time to do that. Not hurry about it, to really take the time to figure out what the requirements are, what the job description is, and what we need to meet our needs now. And I also think that we do need to look at the evaluation tool, and we've talked about that before. I think this is an ideal time to do that. I would suggest we use a 360 type evaluation in which you do solicit input from all kinds of users, because it's only fair to the individual who's a superintendent to know how they're going to be evaluated. But then it's like an audit, you know, you tell them what to do right, and if there are areas in which they can do something better, it's our responsibility to let them know that too. So, that's what
Go ahead.
The only note I had was they've all answered it the same. The superintendent works for the board. The board picks that person. There's got to be good communications. It's essential back and forth both ways with that person. And they need to, you know, evaluate him, and if he's not doing the job that they hired him for, you need to establish what needs to change in his job evaluation, saying, look, you're not fulfilling this was one of the requirements of what we brought you to work for. We need to fix this. And at the same time, communications is essential. So.
Your views first, weren't you? Love that. I love that. So I I just want to offer for anybody, while I ask this one question, to make sure that if you have questions from the audience, to start giving those to Kathleen and to Jill, if you have them. If not, then we will just continue on with our questions. But this question is kind of a long one, but I think it's going to get down to what your strengths are and how you are going to be the leader that we need in the district. So aside from funding, because everybody's, I know, going to say that's an issue here. So aside from funding, what are the greatest challenges facing our district? One very significant challenge will continue to be inadequate funding. But I would like for you to, try to go beyond the funding. How would you go about meeting that challenge with whatever you're going to share, what you think are the challenges in the district? Are there alternative sources of funding or additional resources that the district could utilize? And what would be your priorities in constructing the next budget? So I know you're going to answer it, and it's going to be a funding question, but if you can do both, I would greatly appreciate it. And it's only because we've run out of time. I'm going to give you 2 minutes for each of these. And once I get over here, then Steve would be the first one.
So, aside from the funding challenges that all of the school districts are facing in the state, I think the greatest challenge for this district is reestablishing the credibility of the board and superintendent. So this hiring process, the new board, right out of the gate, how the new board starts to make changes in meetings, policies, I think it's critical. I think that there's been a lot of frustration, I would almost say damage, in what's been going on, and it's time to reestablish what we stand for. And, Citizens for 13J excellence. I think that's really what we stand for, and that's what we need to go after. Now, we have to do that in the course of managing through the budget challenge. So to that point, here's how I look at that challenge, and I break it down the same way I do at work. I try to figure out what are the categories of budget that we're having to deal with. In the case of the school district, it's salaries, it's district staff, and then it's everything else, all of the other miscellaneous things like cost of utilities. In each one of those buckets, what I'd like to see is a better transparent understanding of how much room do we have and what are the constraints that we have to deal with, such as in the area of salaries, what comes to my mind is student-to-teacher ratios, maximum classroom sizes, and just saying we're not going to go above certain maximums. We're just not as a district, and we're just going to say that's it. You have to go to the next area. In the area of administrative staff, I want to benchmark it. I want to understand how we compare to other districts the same size. We should understand whether we're hot, and I would actually, in that area, given what we're facing as a district, I would want to go towards the lower end of how we benchmark with other similar districts. And then that third category, if I might, I would look for cooperative arrangements with other districts where we buy similar things, and that could lead into further investigation of consolidating districts long term. I'm not sure the political will is there today, but I think some exploration in that area would be very interesting, especially with the pressure that all districts are facing.
Okay, so I just added a few seconds to everyone, okay? Okay.
So 2 minutes 10?
You do? You like that? It's going to go off your head, but I know exactly what it is, okay? Preston.
Yeah, well, obviously this is a big concern. To me, I think all of the problems can really be tracked back down to a need for communication. And I say that because, as a board, I think it's bordering on arrogance to think that the board can make all the decisions for the district by themselves. Without the communication of pulling in resources from the community and being able to effectively gather those, be able to discuss them, manage them, and then use all of those pooled resources to come up with the best decision, we're not going to be able to get there effectively, nor in a politically good way. I think we need to pool this community. There's a lot of resources here, there's a lot of ideas, there's a lot of people that have a lot of skills. You know, so-and-so may be great at writing grants and can get the money to put solar cells on all of the schools to lower our utility bills. I'm just throwing out an idea. You know, the Colorado school districts are putting advertisements on their bus. I'm saying there's no bad idea except the ones that we haven't heard. And we need to hear them, we need to be able to vet them, discuss them, and make it a public inclusion type of a process. I know some of that tries to go on in the budget meetings, but I think there's much more room for enhancement of that type of thing. And then in our company, we recently went through what do you call Target Zero. It was centering around safety. And it wasn't anything grand that the company did. It just raised an awareness of everyone within the company, thinking about safety all the time. And yeah, there's big ideas, there's big things that we need to change, but there's also small things that we can change. There's things that we can all do, the teachers can do, administrators can do, people in the community can do. You know, why aren't we double printing stuff that comes out of the school board note packets? Why are we still double mailing stuff to families that have more than one student? Why aren't we emailing a lot of stuff out that could save mailing? I mean, there's minor things like that. There's probably a gazillion ideas out there, but all of us have. We just need to put them together, get them in front of the administrators, figure out a way to do it, and pool those ideas and make it happen. And I think that there's big ideas, and there's lots of small ideas, and together we can make it happen. I'm done.
Okay, everybody's got good ideas. I agree that much of it has to do with communication. And we are dependent upon the superintendent and his administrators to go through that initial process of getting the budget information to us. There are some opportunities, I think, for us to involve the community more than we have. But I also think that we really need to have a very clear understanding of things like what really is our year-end balance as we move forward. What are the kinds of shortfalls we're going to be looking for, not just this year, but in the next year at least, and possibly the year after that. Because what we don't want to do is get ourselves in a situation where we're getting along okay this year and then have to drop off really severely next year. So I think we have to be aware of all kinds of things. I really would like to see us maximize as much as we can in the classroom, the real honest-to-goodness student contact kinds of things. At the same time, you've got to balance the fact that if, you know, your boiler goes out or the plumbing goes out, you have to have contingencies in order to do that.
Thank you.
One of the things that I said first about this, and I've seen the board act upon this before, is we've got to stop having the state and federal sending along messages about unfunded mandates. You decide that there's a mandate that you have to have this done in the classrooms, you have got to fund it, because we already are trying to spend so much money that we don't have. Another issue is the school district has got different pieces of property out there, and there's been a committee looking at, you know, what do we do? Can we sell them? Can we trade them? Or whatever. If you trade off a piece of property, that's one-time money. It's going to go away. Are we able to rent it? Why don't we have a satellite campus for Chemeketa? We have 8 unused rooms in the high school that I'm aware of right now. Chemeketa used to have a satellite here in the 80s. I'm not that old, anyway. But, you know, a number of things is when you look at grants, when we've gotten grant money, and I'll use Primetime for an example. That was that grant, when it started, was that it was supposed to be funded by the parents too, so that that money continued. The goal of that program was that the economy would continue to be robust. You'd be able to fund the program. The economy took a dump, so the money ran out. And now we've got a program that is a great program. But it was, once again, something the federal government started, and the funding was going away. School districts tend to do this, where they fund it, and then they say, we're not going to charge for it, then the money runs out. Okay? And then everybody's up in arms because, my God, you're killing our program. Those kind of things have got to not be allowed to happen. And the public's got to know that that's why the money's ran out. You got to communicate that. You got to let them know why those things are happening.